This is the Dr. DJ Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. DJ, sponsored by LGBG, Let God Be God. We are here for another excellent episode, an inspiring guest that has come forth that came out of just life. So just working through life. Shout out to Willie Sample Shop. And so that created this great connection. I'm sitting here today with Kenneth Hampton.
Yes.
What I would consider to be, if I say it correctly, the entrepreneur,
Yes.
engineer.
And engineer, because I do that as well. But first and foremost, brother, I thank you for allowing me to serve and be on this show and do what God has called for us to do. First and foremost, I'd like to thank God for just giving us another opportunity to be present and be here amongst each other and the connection that He's given us. And thank God to Willie Sample Shop, Jeff and over at Sample Shop, who saw something in you and knew that I had something that may be offered to the service of what you do to the community. So, I'm just grateful for, first and foremost, for being here and just having this opportunity to share with what God has done through my life and how I got to the place and where I'm at and where I'm trying to go in life. And again, God is the center and the source of everything in my life. So everything revolves around Him. I say, I keep Him at the center and let everything else flow around Him. So coming here is just another opportunity to share what God has been doing in my life. So, but I am. Because I can talk, brother.
We both can get with it.
So,
but I want to make sure that the audience knows exactly what you do. Because obviously we had offline conversations about how much faith has impacted, but also creating that streamline, knowing exactly what you're doing, the project you're in, things that you're working on.
Right.
I think that it's important to recognize the process to the person.
Right. Amen. Me as who I am, Kenneth Hampton, born here in New Haven, Connecticut. I'm born in the Hill, raised here. All my life, as a young man, growing up in a single family home. Grew up with just a mom and not having a male role model in my life. So a lot of us who grew up in the inner cities grew up with a broken lifestyle and being conformed to what is our community, our environment is like. So growing up in a single parent home, having my struggles and my battles that I dealt with as a young man, and one of the things that took me away from the things that I dealt with when it comes to abuse or anything that was going on in my household was music. Music was the thing that always took me away from what I dealt with at home or in my community that bothered me as a young man. So growing up, Michael Jackson was the face for my life when I wanted to get away from things, and he let me see that someone that looks like me can actually get away and do something that could free him away from the things that he dealt with in everyday life. So Michael Jackson was the key and the source to me getting away from the struggles and the troubles that I went through as a young man. And entertainment has always been in my heart. So music has always been a part of my life, no matter what. And never been shy about anything when it came to that. So I would always go out, I'd be out on Front Street, family and friends always being the person that's out there trying to entertain people. And that was the mechanism that brought me through, and it held me and it kept me from a lot of different things that I probably could have got into because music was my first passion, my first love. So with that, as I grew up, growing older, and again, in the communities, growing up in the Hill, music, and then like the 80s and 90s when drug dealing came to the surface, hip hop and the culture was something that grabbed me. So I didn't go into that lifestyle that a lot of my peers went into, but I had another addiction. My addiction was women. And not having a father figure that could help me, guide me, and let me understand what being in a relationship was like, what being faithful was like, not lying. So I never had that. So hip hop and women was the route that I went, and going down that path, ended up having children by different women, and not bragging on that, but my children were the best thing that came out of that. But if I'd have known better back then, what I know now, then I wouldn't have been laying down with all these women. hurting a lot of people and hurting myself and not understanding that God was the source of everything in my life and only was till I was like 30 years old when my eyes were open and God says, son, enough is enough. He says, you went through what you went through, but I'm about to show you something different. And when I opened my heart to my Savior, he showed me a different path. He says, I'm going to take all that stuff that you've been through and I'm going to clean you up, take a mess of a man, turn you around, change your mind and your heart and make you a messenger for the Most High.
So let me do this real quick. So I want to make sure we go back to when eyes became open and when ears became open, but also folks also knowing the current work that you do, because we had a conversation about the work that you're currently doing. Right. So highlight the current work you're doing, because the process and them understanding the context of like the work that you've already been doing and what you're connected to, right, becomes so important in the midst of when did my eyes and my ears became open?
Well, currently, I'm in the entertainment industry, and I've been in entertainment all my life, ever since a little man. And so that was the thing that kind of like kept me foundated to a certain degree. But being in the entertainment industry, the lifestyle of an entertainer, as we all know, is money, cars, women, the flashy life. So being drawn to that was something that I got involved with. But back in the like when hip hop started, I was a part of it. So I was rapping back in the 80s and 90s. Mm-hmm. I had a bunch of groups that I was in. One thing about me though is I always believed that I was destined to be in the culture of hip hop and the art of music. So for me, what I ended up doing is I was never the kind of person that would just sit back and just let people just tell me that there's no way to get in the industry. Knowing that in that time, New York City was the highlight of music and the mecca of music for hip hop and the culture. So it was a struggle for us here in Connecticut, a lot of us Connecticut people trying to get into that industry. But I always found a way to get myself in there. So I ended up connecting with a lot of the independent record labels back then. Had a record deal back in like 95. Me and my partner Dave Edwards is known as Swing. So we got a deal with a young lady. We got a record deal on a hip hop reggae label back then, and that kind of stemmed my foundation to know that no matter what I go through, I can do this music thing. I may not become rich and famous, but I can make it a lifestyle to where I can actually make music, make some money, and continue doing it. So like in the late 90s of doing the hip hop on the scene, we did a lot here in Connecticut. We was on the radio, 94.3. Shout out to 94.3 back in the 90s, who promoted us a lot. We opened for a lot of the hip hop groups. We opened for like Nas and Mobb Deep, and we had write-ups in Hip Hop Blaze magazine. We was on Summer Jam. So I did a lot in that industry. Then fast forward, I went into connecting with the major labels like Sony and Warner Brothers, and so I started producing music for artists around the tri-state area, New York, Connecticut, New Jersey. So I started producing, and when I started producing, I started making connections as a producer. So when I would call up the record labels, I wouldn't be an artist anymore. I would call up as Lord of Beats Production. So I started my production company, and then I would get meetings up at Sony back when Juvenile and those guys were getting those big deals.
Back a thing up?
All of that, yes. Dino DeValier, who was the head guy up at Universal, Sony, I was up and I was meeting with these guys. I had an artist out of Connecticut here named Nita Barnes. She was probably one of the hottest female rappers on the planet back then. She was from the streets. She was fire. And so I was going into the labels trying to pitch.
What was Tweet's famous single?
She didn't have a famous single. She was just, all her stuff was like heat. And I produced a couple of Get Your Grind On, You and Only You. So it was a lot of stuff. But I actually walked her stuff up to Sony, sat down, and pitched it. And at that time, again, New York City was like everything, the mecca of music. So me going back and forth from being from Connecticut, I used to get a lot of guys selling me a lot of wolf tickets. I used to get a lot of wolf tickets sold to me back then. And So I would go back and forth to the labels, talk to these people. They used to sell me tickets. And then probably like late 1990, early 2000s, I had a lawyer out of Hamden, Connecticut named Guy Ortoliva. And Guy said to me, he says, listen, bro, he said, you're a talented young man. He says, but you're focusing too much on trying to get into the industry as an artist or a producer. There are other ways to make music and get revenue and start making a lifestyle out of what you do. So he said, listen, there's television, there's film, there's commercials, there's elevator music. So there's all kinds of different ways to get your music out there and start creating revenue from it. So that was the key to me realizing that I don't have to be the rapper. I don't have to be the producer in that industry, but I'm going to go a different route. And I end up connecting with this website called IMDb. What most people probably know what IMDb is. It's the industry databases for all movies and everything in that line of entertainment. So at the time, I didn't know anything about creating music for like film or television. So YouTube became my best friend. And I got on YouTube and started watching like how to make music for film, how to make music for television. And that gave me a whole new twist on the industry. So I left the music industry and I started creating me a website and started creating music for film and television. And then like 1999, 2000, I left the music industry and went into the film aspect of things. And there was a gentleman out of LA who gave me my first opportunity to create music for a film. It was a low budget horror film. I did like 3 movies for him for free. Didn't make a dime, but it gave me credit. And I got credit on IMDb for 3 movies, and that opened up more doors. So now I had credit for doing some movies. I started reaching out to everybody and anybody in the film industry. I started reaching out to Sony Pictures, Warner Brother Pictures, independent labels, and directors and producers and writers. So I started for like 3 or 4 or 5 months. I was just reaching out to people and listen, I did a project. I did a couple of projects. I got some credit on IMDb. Then I got my next opportunity through the Sci-Fi Channel. A producer out of Louisiana gave me my first opportunity to create music for the Sci-Fi Channel. I did a movie called Jules Verne's Mysterious Island, and then Alligator X, which was on Sci-Fi. And that showed me that I could do more in this music than I ever thought that I can do when I was trying to get into that aspect. But what I went through was a learning experience to prepare me for when I got to this point where now I understand a lot more about this music industry and what it takes to actually be successful. And it's all about your determination and your faith. And that is what catapult everything for my life, is to know and believe. When the Lord said to me, he says, son, you can do anything through Christ who strengthens you. He says, but you have to believe by faith and works. He says, if you don't believe, you can't achieve. He said, but if you believe, you can achieve anything that you put your mind to. You got to believe and you got to keep working it. Faith and works go hand in hand. So I said to myself, Lord, you giving me the gift. I know I can do it. And I just proceeded to continue doing it. And then I started doing stuff for film. And then I started doing stuff for BET. I did some Netflix, just like
so now you get into the fruits of things.
Yes.
Because this is really where I wanted you to get to, because the reality is that I know some of the works that we've talked about the mainstream stuff that's happening contemporary right now.
Right.
Even our conversations about what you've brought in and the guests you brought in through the Gospel Fest.
Absolutely.
What becomes important for our audience and listeners is not just where you are, but when you talk about this transition in your journey.
Transition is important.
What is... I can read a bio and understand what they did to get to particular points. The feelings and everything that was transpiring in the process becomes important.
Right.
Because part of our sessions, like, we always don't know, like right now, we always don't know where we're going. Right. We have an idea. We have a plan. And I think today's theme is focused specifically on what does it mean for, you can attest that life is being lifted, mm-hmm. and when you've lost your footing. Because I imagine in the midst of you working all these different things that are going on, that there have to be challenges that also challenge your faith, challenge your commitment, and challenge your willingness to continue in that process, because you just talked about a long journey.
Right.
About how you got there, and we're just talking about film.
Right.
And I imagine that you still have more things that are in the canon that you're ready to do. That how did you fortify yourself? What was the grounding things that were there, and where did you find that at?
Well, for me, I've always been the kind of person that whatever it is I believe in, I'm unstoppable.
Okay.
I just, even when I was in the world, whatever it is that I believe in, I don't stop until I see it. See, what happens with a lot of people is they're not sure about what it is that they're believing in, because faith is absolute. He said with the grain of a mustard seed, like faith with a grain of, just need a little bit of faith and work that little bit until it blossoms into something big. Most people, unfortunately, if they don't see what it is they're striving for in a certain amount of time, they give up. I'm not that kind of person. I never believe in giving up, and I thank God because He created me that way. And not everybody has that, but I say everyone can have that. Is whatever it is that you're believing in, it doesn't matter what time it is. I don't care if I'm 100 years old. I'm going to accomplish what it is that I'm setting out to do. Most people, they don't have that kind of faith in themselves or the circumstances, because circumstances of life start to come choke them, and they don't believe that they can overcome whatever it is they're dealing with. So in this industry, I've had a lot of challenges. I've had a lot of people tell me, you can't. I've had a lot of people say, you've been doing this for all this time, you haven't gotten wherever. It doesn't matter what you think, because I'm going to do everything that I set out to do. And I don't care when it is. We call it a microwave generation. Everybody want it right here, right now. But there's some things that's worth waiting for. And the reward for it is much greater when you actually just go through the process, take each step. Life, we start at the bottom. You can't expect to be at the top stair just like that. You have to take every step in life, step up the step, absorb what's on that step before you take the next step. A lot of people like to skip steps in life, and you end up either tripping, falling back down, or get discouraged because you haven't gotten to the top when you wanted to get to the top.
Can you provide me with a parable? And I think you've used life and industry interchangeably, and I do think there's similarities.
Absolutely.
How do you describe those that are not in the industry, but also trying to use your particular message and walk through life?
Life.
Because they may not come in contact with, some things that may be more apparent in terms of what the industry is offering, but also just that matriculation.
Well, I have to say for us as people, because we're created by...
Black people.
Huh?
Black people?
People.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I just want to...
We're created by the Most High. God is the creator of all, seen and unseen. We're procreated through our parents. We come through our parents. Now, in this life, we're supposed to be trained, raised up to become great-minded people according to our teachings and our learnings and understanding. Everything that we need is already in us. So you have to know that you were created in the image of God. Everyone have to know that. If you don't know that you're created in the image of the greatest creator who created everything, then you're missing who you are. Because most of us, we lie our value upon what people say about us or circumstances. But God's word says, I created you in my image and after my likeness. He said, so if you're created in the greatest image creator of all, you have all power within you. But you have to identify it in yourself and tell yourself that every day, I'm created in the image of God, so I have the power to do whatever it is that I put my mind to. I put my foot forth, I will succeed. And again, it's about timing. Everything happens in timing. Maybe not your timing, but it happens in timing because God has a perfect time for things to manifest.
And the reason I smile when you say that, because you talk specifically about inscription. in terms of you understand your inscription, you've read it, you understand your assignment, you have a mission, now you can steward over it, you can manifest, and you can build.
Absolutely.
I think specifically about how you describe this moment of inscription, which I think a lot of people don't have, that they don't know what their inscription was. So I can't say that someone's blindly walking or they don't know. It's that they don't know that they were inscribed or to steward or to, even though they have children, they manifest, that inscription and everything else wasn't there. And so when you talk about it in that particular way, it seems like you have a particular position of knowing, and not challenge you, but also ask the question, what is it for folks to not know of that particular inscription?
Is to know self. Number one, to know self. If you don't know self, if you don't know that you were created as a great human being, then you're defeating your purpose. Everyone that was born and put here on this earth have greatness in them, but you got to know it within yourself. Again, and we allow our circumstances and situations to dictate on who we are. Circumstances and situations are just mere opportunities to overcome, to show how great you are. Most people allow their situations to overrule them. If I'm going through something, woe is me. No, that's another opportunity for you to overcome and become greater than your circumstances and situations. Most people allow their circumstances and situations to dictate on who they are. It's not, your circumstances is not who you are. It's just what you're going to overcome.
Who was the giver that gave you the acknowledgement that there was an inscription? Yeah, that's it. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you did.
Who was the giver that gave you your inscription to let you know?
Well, growing up as a kid, again, I grew up in a broken home, so I didn't have a male role model to let me identify how great I was. So my circumstances overweighed me because I was raised up broken. It was only until I was 30 years old and going through all the trials and errors that I went through that I was a big club dude. So when my heart was pricked, the Creator pricked my heart and said, I have something else for you. If you want something else other than what you're dealing with, I have something greater. And it was actually the Lord who pricked my heart through what I've been through, throughout my life's journey, that says, listen, there's got to be more than just where I'm at. Even though I was always seeking to do stuff, I still had some stuff within me that I had to get rid of. And the Lord says, I'm going to prick your heart and let you want to see something more than where you're at. You have to want more than where you're at, because most people are content and comfortable where they're at. You have to want more in order to move forward. So
can I challenge you? Said, did he just prick it, or he just?
He kind of slapped me.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you got me like a prick is like he just a little pen. He's like,
and I say this for myself because
it becomes important, because some folks can get pricked,
right?
Because that's like a poke. Like, hey man, let me come. It's like,
no, he slapped me. He slapped me, and he slapped me because of all the stuff that I've been through, and not really realizing like, whoa, what are you doing to yourself? When he slapped me, my eyes opened, and then I still struggled with the old me. Because most of us do. And a lot of people think that you're going to just change overnight. It's a process. It's dying to yourself and your old ways daily, and to seek after something new in life that can take you forward. Now, for myself, when the Lord did call me, I didn't want to answer. I'm be honest. I didn't want to answer. I'm like, oh, I'm loving hanging out. I'm loving going to the club. I'm loving these women. I'm loving as many women that's loving on me. I love that. What man wouldn't love that? Because it makes us feel like our self-worth, like we're worth something, like we're something when women are attached to you like that. But it was 1999. My best friend, he had in my group, he had we made a song called Tonight's the Night. And the record was popular in Connecticut. We was doing tours with it. He and his family, they he left that lifestyle and he went to church and he invited me. And at the time, there was a young lady that lived downstairs from me, her name is Tanya Bellamy. Tanya Bellamy. I used to go downstairs to her house to use her phone so I can go meet with chicks. And she used to minister to me. And I used to be like, yeah, I hear you. You're talking right. But again, I didn't realize that they were planting seeds in my life for when my eyes did open, when the Lord slapped me and I said, okay, I'm gonna try something different. So I never forget, it was December of 1999. I went to the club, picked up a chick, brought her home, did what I had to do, and the Lord said, go to church.
Right after that?
The next morning. But it was due to what people were saying around me. My best friend was now going to church. The young lady downstairs was telling me, ministering to me, and that morning, Lord says, I'm gonna go to church. So I told my mom, I dropped the young lady, I said, I'm going to church. My mom was like, what? I went to church, sat in the back of the church, and I'll never forget the message. And my apostle, Eugene Brunson of the Wayfaring Ministries, he preached the message, says, never let another man go through what you've been through. And it hit me. He says, if you can help someone not fall down the same paths as you've been through, then that's what you need to be doing as a man. And that message hit me. And from that day forward, I wanted more of, how do I do that? How do I learn to not let another man go through what I've been through? Because the only thing I know is the lifestyle I know.
So what would you say right now? This is a perfect point in terms of just like being lifted up and footing, leaving, or being reestablished. What is your ministry now? Like, what is it? Obviously when you found your new ministry, what is your new ministry now?
My ministry is administering truth and word through entertainment. As we kind of brief talked about some of the things that I'm embarked in.
Tell about that, please. Let them know.
I have an independent record company. Mm-hmm. It's called Raise 'Em Up Records.
Yep.
And that was birthed through me doing music for film and television. About 2016, I was blessed, after doing all the movies, I was blessed to do a soundtrack for a movie. That was the first time I had an opportunity to do a soundtrack. And that led me to reaching out to artists in my area. I'm the kind of person that always want to give the new person an opportunity to do something on a platform that they may never had an opportunity or ever get an opportunity to. So I did a movie called Horse for Summer. And I reached out to some of my good friends who were musicians. And I said, listen, I got an opportunity to do this movie and I want to incorporate a soundtrack and I want songs. I want songs for the movie, not just score. And reached out to a lot of artists from around New Haven and they submitted songs. And I had my first opportunity to create a soundtrack for a movie. I was blessed that in the industry, by doing the music for the movies, I had a gentleman who was an executive producer of one of the movies. He said, Ken, he said, how would you like to have some known names on this project as well? And I said, I would love that. That would be great to take up and coming artists and artists that are already established and put them on a project together. Sure. So I got an opportunity to connect with some legends. They connected me with the agents of like the Manhattans, Ambrosia, China McClain from Disney. Mm-hmm. So I got some really great artists that were in the industry who I now offered an opportunity to be on this project because it was going to Netflix and stuff like that. So I was able to collaborate and grab artists. And at the time, I ended up getting a really great soundtrack with a variation of artists, but it didn't have a home for it. So now God says, you got something great. What do you do with it? Going back to my connections when I was in the world with the labels, I said, okay, now it's time for me to reach back out to the labels that I left years ago and see who I can connect with. Now I have a product that's not just me as an upcoming artist. I have a project with very known artists. Let me see who I can connect with, if anybody's still out there that I can connect with. And lo and behold, I reached out to the labels because I was always connected with them. So I reached out to Sony, Warner Brothers, because the labels are now, there's only like 4 majors: Warner, Universal, Sony, and Sony, Warner, Universal, and I think that's probably it right now. But so I reached out to Sony, and lo and behold, one of the executives at Sony, Red, was still there. And I reached out to him, and I said, I don't know if you remember me, but I used to reach back to you back in probably like the earlier 2000s and producing. And because I'm a very persistent person, he remembered me. And he said, well, what can I do with you? It's been a long time. I said, well, I'm not looking to get a record deal or anything like that. I said, I have a product. I worked on a movie. I have a soundtrack with these names. He said, wow. He says, send it, let me listen to it, and I'll let you know what we think. So I sent it into him, and he said, listen, do you have a label? I said, no, I don't have a label. I have a music company, but I don't have a label. He said, well, listen, you start a label, and we'll give you distribution. And I ended up starting Raise 'Em Up Records, because my motto is birthing, from my apostle, is birthing a generation of leaders.
That's you hit the nail on the head, and that's exactly where I was going. Because when you talk about all the things that the industry does not offer, nothing that's wrong. You're obviously working through the industry, and you making the social choice to operate an industry in the ways that the apostle has called you to operate in. But also, I think one of the important things that becomes important to the audience, because obviously we got a local podcast.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if the world's looking at us, but someone said they possibly could be.
They are.
But when we talk about the Hill,
Where I'm from,
as a space for other individuals to map on, to watch, to hear those particular stories in your walk, not just through faith, but also as it's tied to your particular life journey. I think it becomes important to hone in and bring it down, because you described something about like having a commitment to perseverance. And also part of the podcast was like, how does one cultivate and how does one find those particular things and those cultural habits? Because everybody doesn't wake up with that moment.
right?
And I think that becomes important for you to tell that story about not just folks that are in the Hill, but folks that may not be from the Hill, but are from the Hill, that hear that particular story and say, well, how can I get involved? Not just, he in the industry, but it sounds like there's a large window between all the things that happen throughout the industry, folks that are met, folks that cultivate it, because you still got to highlight a couple important middle schools and high schools that did give some time before the industry decided to be present.
Absolutely. Like for myself, again, because
you went to Roberto, didn't you?
No, I went to Troop. I went to Troop Middle. And then growing up in the Hill, I went to Welch Annex. I went to not Roberto Clemente, but I went to Barnard School. So my upbringing in the Hill was confined to the Hill. I didn't know Whaley Avenue existed when I was a young man. I didn't even know Whaley Avenue existed.
You was on Howard Avenue. Howard Avenue?
From Sylvan Avenue on back into the Hill. That's all I was exposed to as a young man. And when my high school, I went to James Hillhouse High School.
Shout out to you.
Yeah. And when I went to Hillhouse, that's when I started to connect with the Ville. Like some of my best friends are from the Ville. Like I had friends from the island, but my high school experience is what brought me closer to everybody. And because music has always been my thing. In high school, God rest Larry Young. Larry Young was the one who got me into rapping. Like I didn't even rap back in the days. I was a DJ, and I was Larry Young's DJ. God rest his soul. That man was one of the illest rappers back in the 90s, the early 90s, the 80s. So he got me into the culture of hip hop and the rapping stage. And when it comes to it, hanging with the brothers in the Ville, and then going to the hill out, West Hills, the brothers out in West Hills, and then going out to the projects out in the island. So growing up in that culture of that era of the 90s, again, I'm 54, so all my peers were the highlight of the drug era.
Yes,
those are my peers, and one thing that all my peers always knew of me is I wasn't the hustler. I wasn't the street hustler. I was the dude that if you saw me, I'm gonna be rapping. I'm gonna be talking about hip hop and getting into the game. So that was my claim to who I was. I've always been that person. I never tried to get out my lane. I never tried to be something that I wasn't. I just stayed in my lane, and I always got that respect from my peers at what I did. So growing up in the Hill, and now going back to the Hill in my youth, it's all about my youth, and to let my youth know that, listen, anything that you want to do, you can do. I'm living proof of it. I'm living proof that you can grow up in the inner cities, broken homes, broken households and everything, and you can still overcome those situations and not let those situations predict who you are. You are not what you go through. You're who God says you are. You are a king. You're a young king. You're a young queen. And you got to know that because you were created that way. And your circumstances do not dictate that. You dictate who you are.
I think that level of atonement that you're saying, I think is important, because we think about generational. Like, how did you figure that out? Yeah. Because I think that, like, in streamlining with the youth, with adults, young adults, I think it becomes important that you're describing something unique, not just where your career went, but the character that you brought with the character that you brought in terms of your journey. And also, that's the kind of like the story that folks want to know, want to experience, because a child can't digest, I'm in the industry.
Right.
And I'm standing on stage and you see me in the industry. And then you tell them, like, if you keep working hard, you can get to the industry. That's not an accurate description of how that person arrives.
I get it.
Because unless and obviously we do the good thing of trying to provide them with independence, accountability, responsibility, right, but also vision and mentorship that helps them to see their vision. Like they shift the corner real quick, because I understand you were thinking about this, but I'm going to give you direction
right,
in your intentionality so that you can actually arrive at this thing that I arrived at, because I always think about someone turned the corner for me. Whether I had a straight line and someone bent it real quick and said, I need you to go over here and talk to this person so that you can get to this new path, because it's an easy story told. Oh yeah, I was just good. I was out here just focusing, doing things.
Right.
Because that's not really the narrative. And I say, you as someone saying, whether it be the Hill, the Trade, the Tribe, the Jungle, Island, Exit 8, like those things matter in terms of, even if we brought folks together having collective conversation and saying, what is this overall thread through that can be exposed that's not being exposed right now, to them, to saying, like, success is a possibility. It's not an idea that we're practicing.
Wow. I think in order to get to that place, it still has to start with the individual who has to believe in themselves. Because what has happened so often in our especially in our inner cities is a lot of children grow up again in broken homes. And when you don't have the proper structure in your household, you're bound to probably go down a path that's not going to give you the proper instructions and guidance. And as a man, like, fathers are so important. We don't realize how important we are, but we're the foundation, because when God created man, he made us the covering over everything in life. And if men aren't training our young men and being an example of what it looks like to be a man, a successful man, a man that's structured for family and raising up his children and showing them what daughter's supposed to see. He's supposed to look at her father and say, I want a husband like my dad. And our young women aren't seeing that because a lot of fathers are not in their place. And our generation, I said my generation, for one, we dropped the ball so much with not being there to raise our young men and women in the household, or even if we're not in the household, just in their lives consistently. That is the foundation for the downfall of why our young people are misled and don't have the guidance that they need, because we're not teaching them.
You grew up in that particular generation that you're describing, and I think this is kind of the overall question. I think that surmises what today could be. What does it mean when you understand that you've been called and anointed to do particular things? So I would say that life is being lifted, called, anointed, and designated and marked for a moment. But for those that had that same experience, what does it mean to lose your footing? And I think that's the reality. I think a lot of individuals, as they were called or birthed with purpose, they birthed children with purpose and opportunity. But what does it mean to be in a particular space when you know that there's a calling and affirmation and things that you supposed to do? Like, hey man, you done got a couple signs from a couple people just around the space that's not in the church. They're saying, hey man, and then even the church, I'm like, and then it's like, but I'm losing my footing. And I say that, and I want you to talk about that as a process where folks hear it and they try to do it, and the fact is like Sam, like it's slippery outside. Right. Like I'm just trying to do right.
Again, when it comes to the individual, number one, because we all created different, we all have different mindsets, we all have different struggles and different situations. One of my sayings is the world is a hospital. The world is a hospital, and everybody's born into this hospital, and everybody has a sickness. Some people have multiple sicknesses. We're all sick, and we're all looking for healing in some kind of way. And my sickness may not be your sickness, but we're all in this hospital together, and we all need help. We all need help. And again, once you come to the understanding that I need help, is number one, is the first thing. Is the first key to I need help. I don't have it all. I need help. So where do I get help? I got to seek help. Hopefully we have parents that are trying to help us. Communities, people around us are trying to help us build the best version of ourselves as we possibly can, because we can't do it without help. And I see a lot of people don't ask for help. It says seek and you shall find. Knock and the door shall open. Ask and it shall be given. We have to really be exerting ourselves and have a mind frame that I can't do this alone. I need help. What can you do to help me to get to this place where I'm trying to get? What can you provide? What kind of information can you give me that's going to help me further along on my journey to get where I gotta go? And if you don't have the answer, you say, listen, let me try to find that answer to help you get that answer as well. Because again, we are all created, and we know nothing until we're taught something. No one knows anything. So we as people have to care enough and love one another enough to say, listen, how can I be a vessel to help whoever comes into my path? And I like to say, a lot of people, they know me. I say, we weren't born for ourselves. We were born for everyone else. Because if you were born for yourself, you'd be by yourself. You were born for the people that's placed in your life. And what you deposit into the lives of the people that's placed in it, you're either going to build or you're going to tear down. There's no in between. You're either building people up or you're tearing people down. So what are you going to do? What am I going to do as an individual? When people are placed in my life, what am I going to do? Am I going to give them the best information that I possibly can, or I'm going to try to use them for my self-purpose and my gain to get what I can out of them? The greatest gift is giving. God so loved the world, he gave. And he didn't only give his only begotten son. He gave you, he gave me, he gave the people, your viewers, he gave us all to this world to give of ourselves. And he said, train up a child in the way that they should go. Every child is born selfish. Every baby is born with the selfish mentality of, I'm going to cry, you give me what I want until I get what I want, and then I'm good. Some people, they grow older, but they don't grow up.
But that's what, and I think you hit it on the head, because my final thing as we're closing out is really that conversation about being able to stand on morals, stand on new beginnings in the context. And obviously we're giving the analogy of it's icy outside, non-firm foundations, or losing one's footing in that new life of being growth, that you describe the industry in that particular way. And also saying, like, we know that we have a large influx of students that have aspirations of coming to this space,
right,
without what we talk about, the moral grounding or self-discovery or self-affirmation or self-morality,
right,
around them to operate in a space the way that you're operated, where it's like, as you've said, and other, I guess, as I know I have purpose in the world, and it's built on this. Mm-hmm. And I think that becomes unique and important for individuals to try to find the spaces that do it. And I think your spaces are doing it. But also their reality that that's a large gambit space, because there are folks that maybe they're not watching, hopefully they do watch, to hear this particular conversation that are in a youthful space. That say, I want to be in the industry. I want these things. But there's a compromise in between it that we're also having a line conversation, like, you don't actually have to. That we're creating spaces that allow you to be your authentic self, to stand in morals, to stand on those grounding things that unearthed. And as in closing, I want you to have the last word to say that. Like, how do we get closer to that while also still allowing our children to have aspirations for the industry? I mean, obviously, I'm football, so I'm like,
right.
The industry.
I think again, everything starts with in the home. Mm-hmm. The foundation of everything is the home. Are we training our children up to know their worth, to know who they are, who they were created? You were created that young prince that's going to turn into a king. You were created as that young princess that's going to turn into a queen. And we have to start instilling that into our children's in the womb. In the womb, we start telling our children who they are, not what society is going to try to tell them who they are. And every child has a vision, and if we start telling them that you can be whatever you visualize, there's a process in it, and knowing that if you stick with it, you can get it. I think that'll be the foundation for in and everybody. It doesn't matter who you are. Is number one is to start instilling who we are from birth, that you are everything that God says you are. God says that you're the head and not the tail. And everything that you need is already in you because God has placed it in you. And when you understand that, when you start believing that and telling yourself that I am everything that God says I am, I'm great. I'm above. I'm not. My circumstances will not take over me. I will overcome each challenge. Knowing when you know that and you start instilling that into yourself daily, you start believing it. You know what I'm saying? It's what most people do. You can either tell yourself that you are, you can tell yourself you're not. Mm-hmm. You're both right.
True.
So what are you going to? What's it going to be? Who are you? I like to tell everybody. Everyone here is put on this earth for a season and a reason. And I say I like to live by. I call it the 4 L's of life. I live, love, laugh, and lift up others. So I'll never take a loss. If we live by the 4 L's, we will never have to take the 5th. Life is a gift, so live it to the best that you can. Love is the greatest gift in life that you can have, so give it. And laughter is medicine for the soul, because if you're not laughing, you're going to probably be crying. And then the other final thing is we're here to lift up one another. Never tearing down. Build bridges, don't burn them, don't tear them down. Build bridges so we can all walk across. And if we live by those four L's of life, we'll never have to take a loss.
You've been around a lot of entertainers.
Yes.
What's the greatest joke you heard?
The greatest joke I heard from an entertainer. Wow.
You're not stealing. You're gonna just paraphrase what they did.
I know a lot of comedians.
Kevin Hart just left.
He just left. Yeah. I know a lot of comedians. And one of the greatest jokes that a comedian have said, it sticks in my mind, is he's out of Brooklyn, New York. He's Caucasian brother from Brooklyn. He says something about us as black people. He says, and he says I love black women. He said they're the most beautiful women on the planet. He said, but y'all come up with some names. He said y'all come up with some names that's like He said he met this young lady one time. And he said she was beautiful. He's like, Queen, I like to take care of you. He was like, what's your name? She said, my name is Lasagna. He said, Lasagna? She said, yeah, my name is Lasagna. He said, girl, you look good enough to eat.
That's a nice pickup line. As we close, let people know how they can find you, and also the new projects you got coming out. Because obviously you told me about the Netflix specials. Please I want folks to know how to find you.
I'm on. You Google me. You can Google my name, Kenneth Hampton. I'm there. Google Kenneth Hampton. RaiseEmUpRecords.com for my website for music. Composers Media Group is my music company for film and television, and I also have a film production company now as well. As through all that God has brought me through, I just wrote a holiday comedy, and it's potentially the biggest holiday comedy that we will ever see. And we're looking at the cast of Kevin Hart, Will Ferrell, Cedric the Entertainer, Bill Burr, Shaq, Megan Good. It's an all-star cast that we're looking to cast for this movie. And I just tell everybody, just keep supporting us here in Connecticut and the things that we're trying to do. But I say there's greatness here in Connecticut, and we haven't gotten the shine that we deserve, but it's coming. It's coming. So you can find me. Just Google the name Kenneth Hampton. I've worked on several movies. I've worked with artists in the industry, R&B artists, gospel artists. I'm connected with mega comedians and things of that nature. So I'm just grateful that God called little old me from the hill to be a vessel that He can use to bring people closer together. Also, I want to tell people, I also have a book out. I'm an author as well. I have a book out called Aspire for Change, because a changed mind leads to a changed life. And the book was put together by a producer in the industry who I inspired her life, and she got behind me and she said, listen, your messages of affirmation need to be out there for the world to hear. I've been sending messages to any and everybody who gave me their number for the last 6-7 years. Every day, I take 2 to 3 hours a day to send messages to people around the world.
You've been sending it to me too.
If God connect me with you, unless you tell me don't send you messages, whatever God places on my heart as to encourage and inspire our people, that's what I'm here for. I'm a vessel to bring forth love, light, and let people know that you're loved, and no matter what you're going through, you can overcome anything. I'm a living witness of that.
Can I write an additional forward? Or can I be casted in your new movie?
We got you. We got you. We got you.
Yeah, it's on camera.
It's on camera. We got you.
This is the Dr. DJ podcast. We appreciate you tuning in. Until next time, peace.